Hey Journey Church, we're glad that you're tuning in today. We're super excited about this week, but also next week, so we're able to start offering in-person services. Now, we will continue to offer online as well, and so if you're online right now, obviously go ahead and click that like and share button so your friends can see. The other thing is this: at the end of this video today, there will be one video talking about what next week will look like if you're going to come to in-person services. The biggest thing we have to say right now is you have to register. The link for that will be available later this afternoon on the app and on Facebook as well. So go ahead and start this service. We're going to open with a prayer. Father God, we thank you for this day. God, we just pray that everything we say and do today be glorifying to you, God, that our worship be pleasing to you, God, that the words we have to say about being a neighbor and actually actively being a neighbor and maybe getting together with some people and sharing a meal and talking about life, God, that as hard as that may be for some of us, it's something that we're challenged to do, God, and something we see throughout your word. And so, God, we just pray that all of our efforts today and even going further is for glorifying you and adding to your kingdom, God. We love you and we thank you. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
And even when the dark is calling, even when my heart is hardened, I can feel your presence drawing me near. And even when my world is frozen, when my joy's been stolen, I can feel your presence calling me here.
As we enter this time of offering, I think back to when I was a little girl and my mom would give me change that she could spare to take to Sunday school. As a child, I might not have really understood the true meaning of this, but I understand that my change was being given to God to help others. Your gifts to Journey are being used to truly help others in our community and around the globe, serving food to the hungry on Tuesday evenings, providing clothing from our clothes closet, supporting the family resource centers at our local schools, helping children learn to read with the YMCA Summer Reading Program. These are just a small sample of the ways your donations are going back to helping others in our community. Like the widow in Mark chapter 12 who could only give the penny she had left, all your donations are important. We use this time to give back to God and show others the blessings that God has shown us.
So as you probably heard by now, we're going to be opening up to in-person services starting next week. And we're super excited about it, but I want to today as we end this series and go into a new one, especially with reopening, bring up the question I brought up a few weeks ago. This idea that have we convinced ourselves that being the church is just gathering together for an hour each week? And if so, is that good news or bad news? And maybe we need to rethink some of these things. I've been thinking about Journey and the journey that we've been on over these years. And we actually turned 10 this year. And we had all these grand ideas of what turning 10 was going to look like as an organization. And then everything just went the way it's gone. And we're not even sure how any of it's going to look in the future. And we're trying to figure it all out. One of the things I thought about was this idea of how we've grown. And Journey has grown. I mean, at one point we were 20 people meeting in a library. And I knew everybody's name. And everybody knew us. And it was this thing where we were just like this group. And now the reality is when I go out to the store in town, I run into people that I have no idea who they are. And yet there they are in their broken made beautiful shirts. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a store and somebody says, "Hey, Jeremy." And I turn around and it's a face that I know I should know who they are, but I'm just really not sure. And sometimes the reality is that we long for the days before, but it's just not going to be that way ever again. And the reality is of what we're understanding about church right now is it may be a long time before it's the way that it once was. And I'm not always sure that's a bad thing. It got me thinking about the early church, and we've talked a little bit about that the past couple of weeks, but these early Christians, they faced so many obstacles in becoming the people that they became and the church that they became that not only changed an empire, but eventually changed the world. And so I was looking at some of the writings that we get from these early Christians, and there's this one book, it's Hebrews, and we're not totally sure who the author was, but the content that they write we know needs to be in there, and the aspect that they have on things is so important. And so in Hebrews chapter 11, it's kind of painting this picture of the people that came before us in faith. And they're the names that if I mentioned them, you would know them because they're the stories that we tell our kids. But it was important for these first Christians to hear these men and women of faith and the journey that they had been on to get to where they are and the path that they had paved for them in that time. And so chapter 11 is like this big, bold chapter of all these amazing stories of these people. And then in chapter 12, the author kind of transitions, and what they want you to understand is it's not just these people's story, it's your story. And it's these first Christians' story. And it's what we're being invited into. And so the author, it's this beautiful piece of scripture that you need to read for yourself. And around verse 23 in chapter 12, and it says, "And to the assembly." Now, what's interesting is when it uses this idea of "to the assembly," this assembly word is a better understanding of what church is. Church is not a building. It's an assembly of people. It's a gathering. And that's actually what the root word in Greek actually means when they use this word for assembly, is a gathering. But the word that they specifically use is intended to be a certain type of gathering. The word that's used that we've translated assembly is the same word in Greek that means party. It's like the author is saying that you've been invited into this party. Now maybe you grew up in a church where you were told you can't have parties and it's not supposed to be fun and it's not supposed to be this exciting, adventurous thing. But here's the thing, if we look at what Jesus actually said, here's what we have to understand. I mean, his very first miracle that we see is Jesus is at a party, a wedding. And it's just like amazing kind of opening that Jesus is out there. He's with the people at a party. And then like the things that Jesus says, like there's this one time that he talks about this idea that like waiting for the kingdom and waiting for what's going to happen is like this idea of a bridegroom waiting. And then when the groom finally comes, it's like there's this party. There's this one section where it talks about the kingdom is like this guy that invites all of these people to this party and they don't show up. And so he goes out and he gathers all of these people and they go and they have this party, this feast. I mean, the story that we just came out of, the prodigal son, it's this story about this party that's thrown for this son that was lost, but now he's found. And the whole chapter, as we've talked about, is this leading up to this idea of that God throws this exciting party for the one that comes back. I mean, it's like over and over again, the examples of we see and the things that we see of Jesus, and he's with the people, and he's at feasts, and he's at parties, and the examples that he uses, these gatherings that he's asked, it's like this festival, this feast, this party. And then like we have to understand that like the language that the authors use when they talk about when he comes back, and what it's going to be like. And the authors, they use this language throughout the New Testament. It's like it's going to be this party. So like at the very beginning of the church, like Jesus has just ascended and he's like left these guys and he tells them they're going to start this thing that's going to change the world. And so in Acts chapter 2, like the whole thing's just got started. It's just got launched. And what we see from these first Christians is amazing. In fact, I'm going to read it for you. In Acts chapter 2, it says this: all the believers were together and shared everything. And it's like this group of people, they realized that the people around them, that even with the differences maybe they had, that they had needs, and maybe they had needs that they could meet. And so they made sure that they shared the things that they had. I mean, that's the thing we have to realize as a church. We all have things that we can share. And it's not always just physical things or assets. It's also who we are. It's our personalities. It's the things that have made us who we are. We can share those with the people around us. And it goes on to say they would sell their land and things they owned and then divide the money to give it to anyone who needed it. It was like they saw the need of some of these people in this culture. And they said, we have so much that we can give so that your needs are met. And it said they like met together in the temple every day. And so it's like this idea they would go to the temple and they would have these big assemblies where they would go and they would celebrate and they would worship together. And that's what we're excited to get back into. I mean, we're going to get back into it starting just next week. But then there was this other piece of it. It said that they ate together in their homes, happy to share their food with joyful hearts. And it's like they would gather in these groups of people, their neighbors and their friends, people that they had met at the assembly. And they would get together and they'd just share a meal and they'd just do life together. They would just talk about life and they would share with each other. And it goes on to say this, that they were joyful, that like this was something they wanted to do, was to gather together with people and share with each other. I mean, isn't that like what a party is? Like we get together and we share with each other and we share food and we share our ideas and we share laughs together. And then it goes on and said that in all of this, because they kind of approached it this way, they didn't think like church was something they go to and then there's like the rest of their life. No, like this was who they were now. And it's like they realized that they'd been invited to this thing. And they had these things in common, but it wasn't just for them. They wanted to see other people brought into this thing. And so the text says, and because they were like this and they shared and they gave and they were generous and they loved each other and they shared with each other, they shared meals with each other, that every single day their number was added to. And so what lessons can we learn in this? It's this idea that maybe you aren't ready to get back into it and get into a large crowd, and I get it. And you're going to see some videos here in a little bit talking about kind of our plan and our strategy. But here's the thing, I get it. And so maybe what you need to do is just get some friends together and start to be the party. Start to have the party and to share a meal and to share your life again with people around you. Or maybe it's this, you're one of those people that like you feel like, hey, the church has grown so big and I don't know everybody anymore, or it's intimidating to walk in. And maybe this is a chance for some of us to be more intentional about gathering people together, people we don't know, to really try to get to understand our neighbor. Not just our physical neighbor, but the people that we're in community at Journey with. And so we invite each other to our houses and we share a meal and we share some laughs together and get to know each other. I mean, I'm excited as anybody to get back into this and to get back to Sunday mornings and being together and singing together and all of those things. But maybe what we need right now is just to rethink some things and to realize that by sharing together, by being involved in each other's lives, by realizing we've been invited to the party and there's other people at the party we need to get to know. Maybe what we need to do right now is just focus on getting together, sharing a meal, and sharing our lives with each other. And in that process, we will grow closer together and grow closer to Him.
Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope with no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. The ash was redeemed, only beauty remains. My orphan heart was given a name. My mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested, my life began. Know your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. Peace from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was ransomed, He faithfully bore. He canceled my debt and He called me His friend. When death was arrested, my life began. Oh, your peace so free washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made me new, now life begins with you. And our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross. Darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. But then Jesus rose with our freedom in hand. When death was arrested, my life began. That's when death was arrested, my life began. Oh, so washes over me. You have made me new. Now life begins with you. It's a wilderness pouring down on us. You have made me new. Now life begins with you. Oh, we're free, free, forever we're free. Come join the soul of all the redeemed. Yes, we're free, free, forever, amen. When death was arrested and my life began. That's when death was arrested and my life began. That's when death was arrested and my life began.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, or even in your suffering you saw to the other side. Knowing this was our salvation, Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever
Hey Journey Church, we're super excited to be able to start having in-person services. Now things are going to look a little bit different for the next couple weeks and possibly even months. And so we wanted to create this video to kind of walk you through the steps of what's going to look like and how to get here and what you do once you get into the building. Now the first thing you need to know is that every single week you attend a service, you will need to register. We have made this as painless as possible. It takes under a minute. That will be available on the app and it will also be available on Facebook. And so every week you'll register for the service you're attending the next week, a week ahead. The cutoff to register will be Thursday to make sure we have plenty of childcare and volunteers to make sure everything is ready to go. Now, once you register and you come to the service here in the building, when you enter these front doors right here, there'll be a couple of options. If you don't have kids, you'll immediately go to the left and we'll have signs for you and we'll walk you through what that's going to look like here in a second. But if you do have kids, you'll turn to the right and there's Kara over there and she'll explain what that looks like here in just a couple minutes. Now, if you do not have kids, as soon as you come into the building, you'll immediately go over here to the left. As you walk in, we'll make sure and have plenty of signs. You can go to the sanctuary right here, or you can go to the bathrooms right there as well. As you start to enter the sanctuary, because we're going to have to do some things differently this time, there will be no reason during the service to get up and take communion. Instead, we'll have these pre-packaged communion cups right here ready for you to go. You'll grab one on your way in. This is also a great time to give offering. One of the things that will be helpful during this time is to go ahead and download the app if you don't have it. It will help with registrations and it will help with giving. The best way to give is to set up recurring giving through the app right now anyway. And so make sure and take some time to do that if you haven't done that already. Now we're going to go into the sanctuary. Now, when you enter the sanctuary, a couple things will look different. We've already spaced out the rows to be about 6 feet apart. We're also asking as you sit down, and as the service starts to get filled, we may have ushers that help you find available seats. As you sit down, one of the things that we ask is that as families, you set 2 seats at least apart. Now, if you're all in the same family, you're more than welcome to sit right next to each other. Now, we will not require everyone to wear masks. We do think it's the smart thing to do, and we will ask that you do. All volunteers you will see will be wearing masks to meet with the guidelines that's been recommended. Now, after you enter the sanctuary and find your seat, there will be no reason for you to get up after you find your seat. We're changing things up, as we said, with communion, and we'll explain that during the service as that goes. One thing you need to know about the services is for now, they will be a little bit shorter. And the main reason we're going to have shorter services for a couple of reasons. Between each service, we need to make sure that we sanitize the entire sanctuary as well as the kids' areas. The other thing is because there will be new procedures, as you'll see here in a minute, with child drop-off and pickup. We want to make sure that we give plenty of time in between those services to make sure and accomplish everything we need to. Now, once you're in the service, if you choose to bring your kids in here, we will have bags available for them with some crafts and things for them to do to kind of help things go by. They're also more than welcome to bring in their tablets as long as they keep those quiet or with some headphones on during the service. Now, the service will look pretty much the same. We'll have worship, we'll have a sermon, we'll have a time of communion as we said. The other thing you need to know is as the service concludes, we're going to ask a couple of different things for you. First of all, you need to know that if you do not have kids, as the service concludes, we're going to ask you to go to the doors to the far left of the sanctuary and exit that way to make sure that we maximize the space in between people. Now, if you do have kids, you're going to go to these center doors right here in the middle of the room and you're going to go down the ramp. And from there, Kara and her team will have everything set up and ready to go to show you what it looks like to pick up your kids during these times. And so we're going to go to Kara right now.
Hey everyone, we are so glad to be back here. I just want to take a few quick moments to explain how drop-off and pickup will work for your families. Once you come in the building, you'll come over to the registration tables that have been set up and you will look for your last name. This will be the adult who registered's last name, not the child's. Once you find your tag, you'll pick up your tag and you will want to be sure to look for which rooms your children will be in. Once you have your tags on, you'll be ready for drop-off. If you have a K through 3rd grader, you will pick up and drop off at this location. A volunteer in the room will explain to you later on how everything will work as you drop off your kids. If you have a preschooler, you will walk over to these doors and there will be a security team member here allowing 1 adult through the hallway at a time. Now, once you drop off your kids, you will exit through the doors at the end of the hallway, and you will head up to the sanctuary by the ramp. At the ramp, there will be communion and offering available as you enter. When it comes time for pickup, if you have a preschooler, you will follow the steps that you just did for entering backwards. You'll go through this door and down the hallway and back out the double doors you came in at the beginning. If you have a 4th or a 5th grader or a student, we will then walk up this hallway to drop them off. So if you have a 4th or 5th grader or a student, you will come up this ramp and there will be a pub table that gives you directions of which way to drop off your student or a child. If you have a 4th or a 5th grader, you will go to their classroom and there will be marked spots on the floor for you to stand as you wait to pick up your child. If you have a student, you will want to follow the arrows down the student hallway for pickup, and then for drop-off, you will want to walk back down the opposite side of the hall. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anyone on staff and we'll be glad to answer your questions.